Hey everyone, All in Arrowhead here. Week 15 delivered one of those weekends that really felt like a turning point in the season, where nearly every game carried weight and the margins between contenders and pretenders continued to shrink. We saw heavyweight matchups like Bills versus Patriots shape the AFC landscape, with both teams showing why they've been in the playoff conversation all year, while Denver stayed on its steady upward path with another important win against the Packers that kept pressure on the rest of the conference. Out in the NFC, the Rams and Lions matchup stood out as a true statement game, one that not only highlighted how explosive Los Angeles can be, but also officially stamped their ticket to the postseason and confirmed them as a team nobody wants to see in January. Seattle also found a way to grind out a win against Indianapolis, relying on poise late and situational execution to remain firmly in the NFC race. In the NFC East, Philadelphia responded with a dominant performance against Las Vegas, showing how overwhelming they can be when the defense dictates the pace, while Washington picked up a meaningful divisional win against the Giants that added even more chaos in the standings. Chicago's win over Cleveland had massive ripple effects as well, influencing playoff math across the conference and even resulting in teams being officially eliminated, a reminder that this stage of the season leaves no room for error. Jacksonville continued to surge with another convincing victory against the Jets, strengthening its hold near the top of the AFC, while elsewhere several franchises were forced to confront the reality that their playoff hopes had officially come to an end. With all 32 teams having played the same number of games and the league now fully into the final stretch, Week 15 made it clear that playoff berths are being clinched, seeding battles are tightening, and every snap from here on out carries postseason consequences as we head into Week 16. Let's get into the games! The Rams enter Week 16 at 11-3 after a statement 41-34 win over the Lions in Week 15 that not only showcased their offensive ceiling but also officially clinched a playoff berth, as Matthew Stafford put together one of his sharper outings with 368 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, repeatedly attacking Detroit downfield, while Puka Nacua dominated all levels of the defense with 181 receiving yards, and the backfield tandem of Kyren Williams and Blake Corum combined for 149 rushing yards and 3 total touchdowns, allowing Los Angeles to stay balanced and wear down the Lions late. Defensively, the Rams gave up yards but tightened in key moments, forcing Detroit to settle for contested throws and keeping control of the game once they seized the lead, a trait that has defined their late season surge. Seattle, also 11-3, comes off a gritty 18-16 win against the Colts in Week 15 that looked nothing like the Rams shootout, as the Seahawks leaned heavily on execution and situational football, totaling 314 yards of offense and relying on Jason Myers' 6 field goals, including the decisive kick in the final minute, while the defense held firm by keeping Indianapolis out of the end zone entirely despite several long drives. The contrast between these teams coming out of Week 15 is stark. The Rams riding momentum, explosiveness, and postseason confirmation, while the Seahawks showed their ability to survive tight, low-margin games through discipline and special teams. And that dynamic makes this NFC West matchup fascinating, but given how complete and confident Los Angeles looked while locking up a playoff spot, I like the Rams' offensive versatility to once again be the difference, with Los Angeles improving to 12-3 and Seattle slipping to 11-4. The Eagles come into Week 16 at 9-5, riding a massive statement win in Week 15 where they shut out the Raiders 31-0. A dominant performance that saw Jalen Hurts complete 12 of 15 passes for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns, while A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert were front and center in the passing game and Saquon Barkley churned out tough yards on the ground, with Philadelphia's defense completely suffocating Las Vegas and holding the Raiders to just 75 total yards, the fewest they've allowed all season, and a clear showcase of how balanced and opportunistic this Eagles group can be when everything clicks on both sides of the ball. Meanwhile, the Commanders enter this NFC East rivalry at 4-10 after a gritty 29-21 Week 15 win over the Giants, a game where Marcus Mariota led the way with 211 passing yards and a touchdown, while Washington's ground attack also made life difficult for New York. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt provided a spark with 96 rushing yards and a touchdown, and a huge momentum play came on a 63-yard punt return score by Jalen Lane that helped build a halftime lead. What stands out about Washington's Week 15 performance is that they managed to find a way to produce points against a struggling Giants defense and got contributions from multiple phases, but the underlying issues have made this season so difficult. Inconsistency in the passing game, defensive breakdowns at critical moments, and an inability to sustain pressure on opposing quarterbacks haven't really gone away. This sets up a classic mismatch narrative. An Eagles team coming off a complete performance on both sides of the ball that looks capable of imposing its will against a Commanders squad that is trying to build some confidence after a rare win but still has too many holes to plug quickly. Expect the Eagles to build on their momentum, move the ball effectively both through the air and on the ground, and rely on a defense that showed it can completely shut a team out, while Washington will have to find a way to slow down Philadelphia's attack and avoid mistakes if they hope to stay within striking distance. I'm taking the Eagles to win this one and improve to 10-5, while the Commanders fall to 4-11. The Packers come into Week 16 at 9-4-1 after a 34-26 loss to the Broncos in Week 15, where the offense moved the ball consistently but couldn't match Denver's efficiency in key moments, finishing with just over 360 total yards while leaving points on the field due to stalled red zone possessions and a turnover that flipped momentum in the second half, as Jordan Love threw for 276 yards and a touchdown but threw 2 interceptions, while the run game contributed solidly but never fully took control of the game flow. Defensively, Green Bay struggled to get off the field, allowing long drives and surrendering multiple scoring possessions late, which exposed issues with third down defense and tackling in space. Chicago, now 10-4, is riding one of its most complete performances of the season after a dominant 31-3 win over the Browns in Week 15. A game where Caleb Williams was efficient and composed, throwing for 242 yards and 2 touchdowns without putting the ball in harm's way, while DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai combined to keep the offense balanced and ahead of the chains as the Bears finished with over 360 yards of offense. The defense was the story, though, holding Cleveland to just 3 points, limiting explosive plays, and consistently winning up front, allowing fewer than 200 total yards and forcing multiple turnovers that kept the game firmly under control from the second quarter on. Based strictly on how these teams looked in Week 15, the Bears appear to be the more complete and disciplined unit right now, especially defensively, and if that level of execution carries over against a Packers team coming off a frustrating loss, I like Chicago to protect home turf, moving to 11-4, while Green Bay slips to 9-5-1. The Los Angeles Chargers head into Week 16 after a gritty 16-13 road victory over the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 15, a game in which Justin Herbert, playing through adversity, connected on the Chargers' lone offensive touchdown with a 16-yard strike to Keandre Lambert-Smith that cut into Kansas City's lead before halftime, and kicking prowess from Cameron Dicker, including a 49-yard field goal and a 23-yard boot, ultimately provided the decisive edge, while Los Angeles' defense bent but did not break in key moments, forcing enough stops and a late interception by Derwin James that sealed the win and, coupled with Patrick Mahomes exiting with a torn ACL, eliminated the Chiefs from postseason contention for the first time since 2014 and vaulted the Chargers to 10-4 on the season. On the other sideline, Dallas enters this Week 16 showdown having fallen to 6-7-1 after a tough 34-26 loss at home to the Minnesota Vikings in Week 15. A matchup where Dak Prescott threw for nearly 300 yards, but the Cowboys struggled to convert explosive plays consistently, relying on the ground game from Javonte Williams and a multi-field goal effort from Brandon Aubrey that ultimately wasn't enough, as Minnesota's balanced attack and clutch scoring drives wore down Dallas's defense. The Chargers have shown an ability to mix Herbert's passing with effective fourth-quarter clock management and timely field goals, but have also had to weather pressure packages and third-down challenges throughout the season, while the Cowboys remain a potent offensive unit that has nonetheless sputtered in critical stretches and now face a must-win situation to remain alive in the wildcard picture. In this marquee Week 16 matchup, I am leaning toward the Chargers to defend on the road and improve to 11-4, while the Cowboys fall to 6-8-1 as they fight to keep postseason hopes alive. The Minnesota Vikings enter Week 16 at 6-8, but already know they're out of the playoff race after their 34-26 Week 15 win over the Cowboys saw them move the ball effectively and score in multiple ways. As quarterback J.J. McCarthy completed 15 of 24 passes for 250 yards with 2 passing touchdowns and also added a rushing score, wide receiver Jalen Nailor hauled in both of McCarthy's touchdown passes, and the Vikings' cumulative offensive effort balanced chunk plays through the air with a tough running game that kept Dallas's defense on its heels for much of the night. Despite finishing with over 300 yards of total offense and making game-changing plays in the second half, Minnesota's elimination came because other results didn't go their way, but the performance still showed they can sustain drives and execute in key moments when both phases click. The New York Giants, sitting at 2-12, are coming off a 29-21 loss in Week 15 against the Commanders, in a game that saw several encouraging offensive moments despite the defeat, with rookie quarterback Jackson Dart throwing for 246 yards and 2 touchdowns while Theo Johnson paced the receiving corps and Tyrone Tracy led the ground game with 70 rushing yards and a touchdown. But New York's defense struggled to contain big plays, including a 63-yard punt return touchdown by Jalen Lane that swung momentum, and the offense wasn't quite able to sustain enough consistency to overcome the early hole. In this matchup, Minnesota's ability to generate explosive plays and convert in the red zone contrasts with New York's flashes of promise that haven't yet translated into consistent production, and I'm leaning toward the Vikings to build on the balanced attack that worked so well in Week 15 and improve to 7-8, while the Giants fall to 2-13. The Bengals come into this Week 16 matchup at 4-10 after a brutal shutout loss to the Ravens in Week 15 that essentially sealed their fate for the season and confirmed they have been eliminated from playoff contention, a harsh culmination of inconsistency and turnovers. In that game, Joe Burrow went 25 of 39 for 225 yards but threw 2 interceptions, including one that was returned for a touchdown after a Ravens defender picked him off and handed the ball to Alohi Gilman to take it 84 yards to the house. And he was held scoreless for the first time in his career as the Cincinnati offense could never get untracked, despite Jamar Chase leading the receiving corps with 10 catches for 132 yards. The Bengals rushed the ball modestly, with Chase Brown and Samaje Perine combining for under 100 yards, but they failed to convert on third downs and never found rhythm on offense against a Baltimore defense that forced mistakes and controlled field position all afternoon. On the other sideline, the Dolphins roll into Week 16 at 6-8 after seeing their playoff hopes crash in Pittsburgh when they fell 28-15 on Monday night, a game in which Tua Tagovailoa completed 22 of 28 for 253 yards and 2 touchdowns, but struggled with pass protection and was sacked multiple times, while their run game remained uneven. Miami's defense had moments early but couldn't contain Steelers quarterback Aaron Rodgers, and the Dolphins failed to sustain enough offensive pressure to keep pace despite contributions from Devon Achane and Darren Waller. Both teams enter this one with little left to play for besides pride, and while Cincinnati will be eager to stop the slide and build some positive momentum, Miami's offense still has enough playmakers to tilt this matchup. I'm leaning Dolphins to win and move to 7-8, and Cincinnati will drop to 4-11 as they continue sorting out their roster moving forward. The Buccaneers come into Week 16 at 7-7 after a crushing 29-28 loss to Atlanta in Week 15, a game where Tampa Bay moved the ball effectively for most of the night but couldn't land the knockout blow late, as Baker Mayfield finished 19 of 34 for 277 yards with 2 touchdowns and an interception, while consistently attacking downfield to Mike Evans, who was the clear focal point of the offense with 6 catches for 132 yards and repeatedly flipping field position with explosive plays. Emeka Egbuka also made his presence felt with 4 receptions for 64 yards, and while the run game was steady rather than dominant with Bucky Irving posting 60 yards on 16 carries, the Bucs still totaled over 330 yards of offense and built momentum through the middle quarters before things unraveled late, including a defensive breakdown that allowed Atlanta to convert a 3rd and 28 on the final drive and ultimately walk off with the win, a moment that overshadowed what had otherwise been a productive offensive outing. Carolina also sits at 7-7 following a 20-17 loss to New Orleans, in which the Panthers showed early life but couldn't close, as Bryce Young accounted for over 200 total yards by throwing for 163 and adding 49 more on the ground, highlighted by a 32-yard touchdown pass to Jalen Coker that gave Carolina an early spark. Yet the offense bogged down in the second half with stalled drives and limited explosive plays, forcing the defense to spend extended time on the field and eventually allowing the Saints to piece together the game-winning drive late in the fourth quarter. Both teams walk into this matchup frustrated by missed opportunities, but Tampa Bay's ability to consistently generate chunk plays through Evans in the passing game gives them a higher offensive ceiling than what Carolina showed last week. And while the Panthers can hang around if Young continues to create with his legs, I'm leaning towards the Buccaneers finding a cleaner finish here, picking Tampa Bay to move to 8-7, while Carolina slips to 7-8. The Jets head into Week 16 at 3-11 after a difficult Week 15 loss against Jacksonville that highlighted many of the issues that have followed them throughout the season, as the offense struggled to find consistency and protect the football, with Brady Cook throwing for 176 yards and a touchdown, but also committing 3 interceptions that stalled drives and consistently put the Jets behind the sticks, while New York finished the game with fewer than 300 total yards and had trouble sustaining possessions despite brief flashes of efficiency early on. The run game never truly got going, forcing the Jets into predictable passing situations, and defensively they were on the field for extended stretches, wearing down as the game progressed and allowing the scoreboard to get out of hand despite some effort late that resulted in a more competitive fourth quarter. Meanwhile, the Saints come in at 4-10 after a hard-fought 20-17 win in Week 15 that showed a more composed version of their offense, led by Tyler Shuck completing 24 of 32 passes for 272 yards and a touchdown, consistently moving the chains and keeping the offense on schedule, while Chris Olave served as the focal point of the passing attack with 6 catches for 85 yards and a score. New Orleans played a relatively clean game offensively, avoiding turnovers and capitalizing on field position, and defensively they tightened up in key moments, limiting explosive plays and forcing long drives that ultimately stalled, setting the stage for a calm, methodical final possession that ended with a walk-off field goal to seal the win. Based strictly on what each team showed in Week 15, the Saints appear to be the steadier and more disciplined team right now, particularly at quarterback and in late-game execution, which makes New Orleans the safer pick to improve to 5-10, while the Jets look likely to slide to 3-12 as they continue searching for answers on offense. The Bills enter Week 16 at 10-4 after a statement 35-31 win over the Patriots in Week 15, a game where Buffalo showed resilience after falling behind early and leaned on Josh Allen's arm to flip the script, as he threw 3 touchdown passes and consistently attacked New England's secondary in the second half, while extending plays with his legs to keep drives alive, and James Cook adding balance by contributing both as a runner and receiver to help Buffalo control tempo late. Defensively, the Bills bent at times after allowing 2 long rushing touchdowns early, but they tightened in key moments, forcing punts in the fourth quarter and coming up with a late stop that sealed the comeback and underscored their ability to win high-pressured games. Cleveland, meanwhile, comes in at 3-11 after a rough 31-3 loss to the Bears in Week 15 that was never competitive, as quarterback Shedeur Sanders completed 18 of 35 for 177 yards, but threw 3 costly picks. The Browns' offense struggled to find any rhythm, finishing with limited yardage, multiple stalled drives, and no sustained success in the red zone, while the passing game failed to stretch the field and the run game was bottled up early, putting them behind the chains for most of the afternoon. Defensively, Cleveland had trouble getting off the field, allowing Chicago to control possession, convert key third downs, and wear them down with a steady rushing attack, with the lone bright spot coming from sporadic pressure that did not translate into momentum-changing plays. This matchup contrasts a Buffalo team riding confidence after a comeback win, with the Cleveland squad searching for answers on both sides of the ball, and unless the Browns can dramatically improve their offensive efficiency and time of possession it sets up a tough ask against a Bills team that has shown it can close games in multiple ways. I'm picking Buffalo to keep rolling and improve to 11-4, while Cleveland drops to 3-12. The Kansas City Chiefs head into Week 16 coming off a 16-13 loss to the Chargers in Week 15 that officially eliminated them from playoff contention. A frustrating outcome in a game where opportunities were there but execution fell short throughout. Patrick Mahomes finished with 189 passing yards on 16 of 28 throwing, with an interception and no passing touchdowns. And while he added a short rushing score early, the offense stalled repeatedly, as Kansas City managed just 49 rushing yards as a team and failed to sustain drives late, settling for field goals instead of capitalizing in the red zone, with Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice moving the chains at times but never fully breaking open the Chargers' defense. While defensively, the Chiefs kept things close but allowed enough methodical drives and key third down conversions to let the game slip away late, sealing their postseason fate. On the other side, the Titans enter this matchup after a 37-24 loss to the 49ers in Week 15, a game where Tennessee struggled to keep pace as their defense was stretched vertically and horizontally, allowing nearly 300 passing yards and 3 touchdowns through the air, even as the offense found some stability behind Tony Pollard's 100-plus rushing yards and a touchdown that briefly kept them within striking distance. Still, turnovers, missed stops, and an inability to match San Francisco's efficiency proved costly, as Tennessee fell to 2-12. With Kansas City now playing for pride and evaluation rather than playoff positioning, this matchup becomes a test of whether the Chiefs can respond with urgency and cleaner execution against a Titans team that continues to fight despite the record. And I'll take Kansas City to snap back with a win and move to 7-8, while Tennessee drops to 2-13. I hate to do this to you, boys. The Jaguars come into Week 16 at 10-4 after a dominant 48-20 win over the Jets in Week 15, in which Jacksonville's offense was firing on all cylinders, outgaining New York 438-284 and putting up points in every quarter. Trevor Lawrence completed 20 of 32 passes for 330 yards and 5 touchdowns, while also rushing for a 6th score, and Travis Etienne was a big part of the scoring with 3 receiving touchdowns for 73 yards, as Jacksonville consistently found the end zone and never let the Jets get within striking distance, while the run game contributed solidly and the defense held New York out of any sustained drives once the Jaguars had built a big lead. On the other side, the Broncos arrive at 12-2 after a 34-26 win over the Packers in Week 15 that clinched their playoff spot and showcased Denver's offensive balance and clutch execution, as Bo Nix tied a career high with 4 touchdown passes while throwing for 302 yards and spreading the ball around to Courtland Sutton, who had 7 receptions for 113 yards and a touchdown, Lil Jordan Humphrey and Michael Bandy, and R.J. Harvey added a rushing score in a game where the Broncos consistently found ways to convert in the red zone and respond when Green Bay threatened. And though Denver's defense surrendered some yardage, it came up with timely stops and forced key incompletions late to preserve the victory. This matchup pits a Jaguars offense that has been one of the most explosive in the league in recent weeks, and while Jacksonville's ability to score quickly and in bunches gives it a real shot, I'm leaning with the Broncos' balance and sustained success over the course of the season to get the edge here, picking Denver to improve to 13-2, while the Jaguars fall to 10-5.
Woohoo!
The Falcons enter Week 16 at 5-9 after a dramatic 29-28 comeback win in Week 15 against Tampa Bay that showcased their offensive upside and late-game resilience, as Kirk Cousins delivered one of his best performances of the season by throwing for 373 yards and 3 touchdowns without an interception, consistently pushing the ball downfield and keeping drives alive, while Kyle Pitts was the clear focal point of the passing attack with 11 receptions for 166 yards and all 3 receiving touchdowns, repeatedly winning matchups in the middle of the field. Atlanta also leaned on Bijan Robinson to keep the offense balanced, with Robinson totaling 93 rushing yards and a score on 19 carries, helping the Falcons finish with 476 total yards and strong time of possession numbers. And although the defense allowed chunk plays at times, it came up with timely stops late and forced a key turnover that helped swing momentum and set up the game-winning field goal. The Cardinals, meanwhile, come in at 3-11 after a 40-20 loss in Week 15 that featured some encouraging individual performances but continued defensive struggles, as Jacoby Brissett threw for multiple touchdowns and leaned heavily on Trey McBride, who once again led the offense with 134 receiving yards and 2 scores, serving as Arizona's most reliable option in the passing game. However, the Cardinals struggled to sustain drives consistently, had difficulty converting in key situations, and were unable to control the line of scrimmage for long stretches, putting added strain on a defense that struggled to get off the field and allowed the game to slip away early. With Atlanta coming off a confidence-boosting comeback fueled by explosive passing, and Arizona still searching for consistency despite strong production from its top weapons, I'm picking the Falcons to build on that momentum and move to 6-9, while the Cardinals fall to 3-12. The Raiders come into Week 16 at 2-12 following a 31-0 shutout loss to the Eagles in Week 15, in which Las Vegas was completely overwhelmed on both sides of the ball, generating just 75 total yards of offense, one of the lowest single-game outputs in the league, with quarterback Kenny Pickett completing only 15 of 25 passes for 64 yards and an interception, while the ground game was stifled from the outset and the Raiders never crossed midfield, and their defense was unable to slow the Eagles' efficient scoring drives or make a key stop at any point, as Philadelphia built its lead with touchdowns from Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley, and A.J. Brown. The Texans enter this matchup at 9-5 off a convincing 40-20 win over the Cardinals that extended Houston's winning streak to 6 games and featured a balanced and explosive offensive attack, as C.J. Stroud threw for 260 yards and 3 touchdowns, including a 57-yard strike to Nico Collins on Houston's second play that set the tone early. Running back Jawar Jordan added 101 rushing yards in his NFL debut to keep the Cardinals' defense off balance, and Dalton Schultz chipped in with 76 receiving yards and a score, while kicker Kaimi Fairbairn provided 4 field goals. Houston's defense also contributed by creating opportunities and helping the Texans maintain a comfortable lead throughout, allowing Arizona only occasional scores and keeping pressure on in key moments. This sets up a stark contrast of a Raiders unit still searching for any offensive identity against a Texans squad demonstrating league-leading balance and confidence on both sides of the ball. And I'm picking Houston to control its strong stretch here, moving to 10-5 while the Raiders fall to 2-13. The Steelers enter Week 16 at 8-6 after a convincing 28-15 win over the Dolphins in Week 15 that underscored how balanced and opportunistic Pittsburgh can be when everything clicks, as veteran quarterback Aaron Rodgers completed 23 of 27 passes for 224 yards and 2 touchdowns while spreading the ball around to playmakers. Kenneth Gainwell erupted for 126 scrimmage yards with an 80-yard rushing night and 46 more receiving, and the running game complemented the passing attack in a way that kept drives alive and controlled tempo, while the defense did a solid job forcing timely stops, including containing Miami's passing game after an early field goal and keeping the Dolphins off the scoreboard in the second half, helping Pittsburgh maintain possession and sustain enough pressure to manage the game from start to finish. Meanwhile, the Lions come into this matchup at 8-6 following a 41-34 loss to the Rams that featured plenty of offense from Detroit, but also exposed a few defensive vulnerabilities, as quarterback Jared Goff threw for 338 yards and 3 touchdowns, and the Lions' offense consistently moved the ball through the air and on the ground, yet the defense had trouble containing big plays at critical junctures and ultimately allowed multiple scoring drives that put the game out of reach, despite explosive contributions from their offensive weapons. The contrast presented in these Week 15 performances is telling. Pittsburgh managed to play complementary football with efficiency on both sides of the ball and controlled the clock, while Detroit's high-octane offense was undermined by defensive breakdowns and an inability to clamp down in pivotal moments. In this Week 16 meeting, I'm leaning with the Steelers' more complete performance profile, capable of sustaining scoring drives and making enough stops to earn a road win, picking Pittsburgh to improve to 9-6, while Detroit slips to 8-7. The Patriots come into Week 16 at 11-3 after a dramatic 35-31 loss to the Bills in Week 15, a game that featured a huge second-half swing and highlighted both New England's offensive talent and some lingering defensive issues. Drake May threw for 155 yards and an interception, while rookie Travion Henderson gashed Buffalo's defense for 148 rushing yards and 2 long touchdown runs of 52 and 65 yards, giving the Patriots a big early lead, but Buffalo rallied behind 3 touchdown passes from Josh Allen and a balanced attack from James Cook, leaving New England's defense searching for answers even as the offense continued to produce points. The loss snapped a 10-game winning streak and delayed New England's chance to clinch the AFC East, but the Patriots still sit atop the division and have shown an ability to move the ball in multiple ways against tough competition. On the other side, the Ravens enter at 7-7, riding one of their most complete games of the season, a 24-0 shutout of the Bengals in Week 15 that saw Lamar Jackson efficiently manage the offense, with 150 passing yards and 2 touchdown strikes to Rasheen Ali and Zay Flowers, while Derrick Henry churned out 100 rushing yards to control the clock and sustain drives, and Baltimore's defense smothered Cincinnati all day, forcing turnovers and shutting the opposition out for the first time in years, despite the Bengals controlling possession for much of the game. That defensive performance gives Baltimore confidence that it can flip the script after some uneven weeks, but the Ravens will need to sustain that same level of play against a much more explosive Patriots offense that showed it can strike from anywhere on the field. This matchup is intriguing because New England's ability to score in bunches is countered by Baltimore's recent defensive dominance and efficient offense, and it could come down to who wins the turnover battle and which quarterback makes the key play late. I am leaning with the Patriots. Their overall balance and ability to bounce back from adversity should carry them, improving to 12-3, while the Ravens fall to 7-8. The San Francisco 49ers roll into Week 16 off a strong 37-24 win over the Titans in Week 15, a game where Brock Purdy was sharp and carved up Tennessee's defense with 3 touchdown passes while completing 23 of 30 throws for nearly 300 yards and added a couple of key first down runs to keep drives alive. And San Francisco converted its first 7 third-down attempts against a struggling pass rush that couldn't get consistent pressure. Christian McCaffrey helped sustain long drives with tough yards on the ground and in the short passing game, while Jawan Jennings and George Kittle each found the end zone, showing the Niners can attack both vertically and in short yardage scoring situations. On the other side, the Indianapolis Colts are coming off a hard-fought 18-16 loss to the Seattle Seahawks in Week 15, where veteran quarterback Phillip Rivers made his rare return and threw a touchdown to Josh Downs, but the offense stalled beyond the red zone and settled for field goals as Jason Myers booted 6 to edge Indianapolis. The Colts actually led midway through the second quarter and moved the ball methodically, with Jonathan Taylor grinding out 87 rushing yards and contributing in the passing game, but turnovers and an inability to finish drives ultimately cost them as Seattle's defense bent late and the Seahawks kicker provided all of their offense. San Francisco's defense will need to continue generating pressure and stopping the run to limit the Colts' balanced attack, while the 49ers offense will lean on Purdy's rhythm and McCaffrey's versatility to control tempo. This matchup comes down to San Francisco's ability to sustain drives and make big plays versus Indianapolis's efforts to get more explosive plays and tighten execution in scoring territory. and with the 49ers playing with momentum and a complete offensive attack, I'm leaning San Francisco to improve to 11-4, while the Colts fall to 8-7. As we head deeper into the final stretch of the season, the playoff picture is starting to crystallize, and Week 16 presents several pivotal clinching scenarios across both conferences that could dramatically shape the bracket. In the NFC, Philadelphia has a clear path to locking up the NFC East, as a win does it outright, but even a tie combined with a Dallas tie or any Cowboys loss would still crown the Eagles as division champs, highlighting just how much control they have entering the weekend. Green Bay and Chicago are in similar positions in the NFC wildcard race, with both teams able to punch their tickets with a win paired with a Detroit loss or tie, while even a tie could be enough if the Lions stumble, making Detroit the key hinge point in multiple scenarios. Seattle also sits in a strong spot, needing only a win or tie to secure a playoff berth, or simply a Detroit loss or tie, while San Francisco can clinch as well with a win, a tie paired with a Detroit tie, or again, any Lions loss, underscoring how much pressure is on Detroit down the stretch. Over in the AFC, Denver has a chance to make a massive statement, as the Broncos can clinch the AFC West with a win and a Chargers loss or tie, or even with a tie if Los Angeles loses. And they can go a step further by locking up the number 1 seed with a win combined with a Chargers loss or tie, plus losses by both New England and Buffalo, a scenario that would firmly establish them as the conference's top team. New England is on the brink as well, able to clinch a playoff berth with a win or tie, or even without winning if either Indianapolis or Houston loses or ties, while Buffalo's path is slightly narrower but still clear, as a win paired with either an Indianapolis or Houston loss or tie gets them in, and even a tie can be enough if the right dominoes fall. The Chargers also remain in the mix, with multiple avenues to clinch that include a win plus losses or ties from Indianapolis or Houston, or even tie-based scenarios that still get them across the line, making Week 16 one of the most consequential weekends of the season, as several teams could go from fighting for position to officially punching their playoff tickets. Y'all know the rules of the game.